What's up, heathens? How ya doing? So tonight we have Genesis Apologetics, who's going to try and fit the dinosaurs of the past into the Bible. They're going to try to use intelligent design or creationism in order to explain certain things that we find in geology and just in general reality. They're going to fail to do this, and I'm going to explain why. I've got extensive notes on why they're wrong. So we're going to be going through that tonight in one of their videos they released about a year ago. The Skeptic Mafia has already seen it, but for those of you that haven't, I hope that you will stay tuned. Okay, so how do dinosaurs fit in the Bible? We are all wanting to know. Please tell us. Imbue us with your wisdom. Is that how you say that shit? Imbue? I don't know. Uhan Roderick says Brocephus 2020. You know, honestly, if he ran as a conservative, I think he'd get voted in. Y'all see this Donald Trump fuck? He is. Anyways, I could do it.
Evolution holds that dinosaurs evolved 220 million years ago and died about 65 million years ago from any of a number of possible extinction events. But the Bible...
So, not to stop it too soon or anything, but already at the outset, I mean, we know that asteroids hit the Earth and that's what caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. You trying to, like, throw some kind of, like, uncertainty in science as if to perform some kind of genetic fallacy on it. Like, oh, science doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. I mean, I don't know. It's not really all that convincing. And it probably is convincing to those already convinced of your position. But it's not convincing to people that actually know the science and shit.
Teaches that all land animals, including dinosaurs, were created on the sixth day of creation, just thousands of years ago, and they were all named by Adam just before God handed over his completed creation to Adam and Eve, charging them to take dominion over his completed creation. Then, about 4,400 years ago, the entire world was deluged by Noah's flood, and the dinosaurs, along with billions of other creatures, were wiped out. Let's take a quick look.
Okay. So basically, the premise of Genesis Apologetics in general, and I guess intelligent design creationism, is that the Bible is correct no matter what. No matter what we observe in reality, obviously it is wrong of us to assume that the Earth is old and that dinosaurs lived millions of years ago because the Bible says different. That is their main basis for everything that they ever do. It's the main thing for intelligent design in general. The Bible's right, everything else is wrong. We should interpret our reality to match what the Bible says because the Bible is right. That's Genesis Apologetics and intelligent design in a nutshell. All right, let's get to these 80 kinds. It says only around 80 kinds of dinosaurs were likely saved on the Ark. So, what kinds? Could you tell me which kinds were saved? It's got to be which is the Brontosaurus? The Brontosaurus is the one that was really the Apollosaurus, right? I don't know if I'm saying these fucking names right.
At some evidences that show that the biblical account might actually be true. First, dinosaurs are cleverly designed. Consider this Triceratops. Its 2,000-pound head is mounted in a way that allows it to turn every which way, yet still be strong enough to ram something, even while running. What about massive sauropods with weight-bearing systems from hip to toe that allow its 200,000-pound body to even walk, and neck vertebrae that are 90% filled with air so it can lift up its head? Next, there's the absence of dinosaur ancestors and transitions. Even this should...
Okay, hold on. Before we get to the transitional fossils... So that bit right there was the argument from complexity. Basically, in intelligent design land, they say that, oh, this shit's complex, therefore God had to design this shit. Because other things in this universe are complex and are designed by humans. So therefore, this shit has to be designed by somebody, and the only somebody that could be is God, specifically the Christian God. But, you know, we'll just go with intelligent design as this amorphous sort of deity that's up there designing shit on a whim. So, basically... this particular argument doesn't make sense when we have natural processes to explain the complexity. True, there is complexity in it, but we have natural processes like natural selection, sexual selection, genetic drift, and gene flow to explain how these particular things could have come about and could have developed in the way that they did, or the way that we find them. Because we have these natural processes, we no longer need a God explanation in order to describe how it happened, what happened, or anything. Because the God explanation doesn't actually describe or explain anything about it. It's just a stop sign that says God on it. And it's like, stop right here. God designed this shit. You can tell because it's got a lot of fucking moving parts. I mean, can't you see this shit? That Triceratops was like wiggling its head around and everything, and then that long ass Brachiosaur, Apologetics, whatever the fuck it was fucking complicated as shit. Only God could fill its fucking bones with air and shit. See? It just seems so ridiculous.
Chicago Field Museum sign admits there have been 0 transitions between dinosaur kinds. It shows question marks regarding where they came from.
Sorry. We got another super chat from Uhan Roderick. I really want to watch Land Before Time. Here's some cough medicine money instead of beer money this week. P.S. Join skepticmafia.com. Thank you, Uhan Roderick. So, when they talk about transitional fossils, they tell you that there's no transitional fossils or anything like that. And even in the video there, they said, oh, hey, look, they just draw question marks right here. Well, really what they were drawing is the phylogeny of the different kind of animals, I guess, that they had on display. It wasn't necessarily a fully fleshed out, like, oh, these are all of the bones that we have. We have bones of many transitional fossils, and in fact, all bones, the fossils that we have are transitional fossils, because life is always in transition. So when they say, oh, there are no transitional fossils that link like the Tyrannosaurus Rex back to a common ancestor, that's complete bullshit. We have fossils that show that the actual lineage of T-Rexes come from a much smaller dinosaur. And over like 20 million years or so, that little fucker grew up pretty big, and now then he became the bully of the fucking earth, I guess. But he started out really small, and we have fossil evidence for this. Now, the question that you have to ask at this point is, how does creationism or intelligent design explain this or predict anything about it? And what you find is that it can't. It can't predict the lineage of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It can't predict the lineage of the Stegosauruses, which is another fossil that it had on the Fields Museum thing. It can't tell us anything. We can't predict what other kinds of fossils we should find. Now, in that particular thing, what you had was a groupings of different animals based on their physiological traits. Like with Stegosaurus, they're grouped with other dinosaurs that also had like plates on their back and everything like that. They're all part of the same like clade. So when they say there's no transitional fossils, they're lying, for one. For two, their particular idea can't give us any kind of indication about any fossils anywhere. Arduin sent a super chat saying, I'll keep saying it, I'm a Billyist. I believe that the universe was created by an alien 4th grader called Billy, who created the universe as a science project and got a C- for it. Convert to Billyism. Fuck it, Billy, why'd you have to be so fucking mediocre?
It's almost like someone just put each basic kind on Earth right at the same time. There are even dinosaur design features that show they lived in the ideal pre-flood world.
Okay, so before we get to that point, I'm so sorry to stop it so quick, but it's going to be a running thing that they say that, oh, all of these animals were created at the exact same time, and then they were buried at the exact same time. But this doesn't make a lot of sense. This doesn't explain a lot that we observe in reality. For one thing, we observe fossils in different strata. And the fact that there are multiple strata is a major blow to creationism. If there was a global flood that buried everything and like caused things to fossilize quick or whatever the fuck, I mean, we would expect to see one strata. We wouldn't expect to see multiple strata. But they go through great lengths and even just flat out make shit up in order to make it fit into their worldview. And I think that you're going to see this in this video, how they twist facts, how they'll present information that doesn't actually support them, but actually, but try to use it in support of themselves. And it's just very disingenuous, and it makes you go Forrest Whitaker-eye at times. All right, back to the design features that apparently point to a designer.
Sauropods can exceed 200,000 pounds, yet they have tiny nostrils for breathing. Pterodactyls may have been too heavy to fly in today's atmosphere.
Okay, I wanted him to get that out because he says a lot of things that are wrong right here at the onset. So with the sauropods, the long neck dinosaurs and everything like that, he is assuming that they breathe like mammals do, and they don't. Or at least the most likely situation is that they breathe more like birds, meaning that they don't have to exhale before they inhale again. They just can constantly inhale and have oxygen flowing through their system continuously, rather than having to exhale like we do and then inhale again. That's not how they would have breathed. So that's why the nostrils could have been as small as they were. And then when he's talking about the pteranodons or the pterodactyls, basically there's one person that says that they were too heavy, and therefore that means that they are too heavy. In fact, we don't know a lot about how heavy the pteranodons were. We know that they were big, but we also know that their bones were full of air. They were very similar to how birds' structures are now. But we don't actually know, one, how much they weighed. We can guess. Number two, we don't know how they flew. Did they actually have to flap their arms, or did they just glide? If they had to flap their arms, they may have a point. But if they just were gliding, through, propelling themselves in the air or off a cliff or something like that, those are very likely suggestions and are actually way more likely than God did it. And now he's going to go over some more design features. This is still just an argument from complexity. These complex systems show that the world was very different back then, and therefore God in the pre-flood days created everything. That's basically what they're saying.
Same with huge pre-flood dragonflies. The fossil record is filled with giant creatures and plants. We know this because there are billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth. And when we look at the dinosaur fossil record, we see that they were buried furiously, rapidly, and simultaneously, oftentimes found fleeing in groups.
So they're reading a lot into this. It's akin to like when you read a passage in the Bible and you come away thinking that Jesus rented a movie from Blockbuster. Because none of that shit actually happened. You're lying about what you read, and there's just no supporting evidence for what you just said. For one thing, they're reading into the evidence to say that they were fleeing something. While most of the fossils that have formed and everything like that are the results of some kind of like natural disaster or weather system or something like that causing flooding or something, that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a global flood that they were running from. They could have just been running from normal fucking weather. See, in that portion of the United States that they showed, it was covered by a sea, and dinosaurs, they lived on the edge of that sea because that's where the food was. And so, of course, in that area right there, they would have had like storms, hurricanes, all this other stuff. Flooding would have happened. See, these are natural processes, natural things that we can understand and we can explain without having to invoke God. But they want to go right for the God explanation, saying that, oh, it's obvious that everything was laid down. Well, if everything was laid down all at once by a global flood, why do we find multiple strata? Why is there different species of animals at every strata? Why are there not trilobites mixed in with dinosaur bones? Why are there no human bones mixed with dinosaur bones? Why are there no trilobites with human bones? If God created all the organisms at once and then flooded the entire world at once, why don't we find a mix of these bones? And evolution, geology, science in general would tell you, because it's the Earth is millions or billions of years old. It works as a gradual process via uniformitarianism, and all of these animals lived at different times in our past. That's how science would explain it. How would ID explain it? God! That's the only explanation that they have.
This massive bone bed in Hilda, Canada, thousands of centrosaurs were catastrophically buried over an entire square mile. Or this one in China, where thousands of different kinds of dinosaurs were simultaneously buried in a single 980-foot-long ravine. There are hundreds of dinosaur bone beds all over the world, including the US, where the Morrison Formation covers 13 states and 700,000 square miles. Thousands of torn-apart dinosaurs are buried here in hundreds of mass graves.
Okay, so to go over a few things here. First, we have the centrosaur bone bed. That area was very different during the late Cretaceous. The area of the bone beds were subject to a lot of flooding and tropical storms. So it makes a lot of sense, given the area that they were in, that there would have been flooding and that it would have killed a whole bunch of them. Just one bad storm with the herd of these centrosaurs at the edge of the water or wherever would have been enough to like kill them. So birds and mammals were adapted to survive a lot better because they could have escaped those particular conditions a lot easier than the centrosaurs were. So that's why we find these centrosaur bone beds. Next up is the Morrison Formation, which they, throughout this video, are going to say that this is evidence of like a global flood happening and everything being laid down at once. But what they're not going to tell you is that the Morrison Formation is actually broken up into 4 separate layers, each one getting older the farther that you go down. Now, the formation itself took about 9 to 11 million years in order for it to form. And the reason why it took, why this formation is even there is because of east-facing drainage basins, rivers, streams, and everything like that. Over the course of the 9 to 11 million years, it eventually formed this formation there that had all of these animal fossils in it.
With many found in the classic death pose with their necks arched back, choking as they died. Museum signs everywhere even admit they died in a watery catastrophe. Some dinosaurs are even found.
So, I know I'm stopping it a lot. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna let them talk here in a minute. But do you notice how they're saying like, oh, everything is like all of these fossils were died in a flood, or they were died because there was a flooding or something like that, and they got covered up quick. Therefore, the global flood is supported by this fossil evidence, and they're going to continue saying that throughout the entire video here. That just because all of these places show signs of flooding, or the reasons why they were buried or anything like that is because of flooding or some other natural disaster, therefore the global flood is proved. And that's just a large leap in logic right there. I would call that a false cause. I guess there's a false cause fallacy. There's a slippery slope, I guess. I don't know.
Mummified, with tree leaves, flowers, ferns, shrubs, and algae still in their stomach. Dinosaurs are even found buried with marine creatures. Isn't a global flood the best explanation for this? Scientists have been discovering soft tissue in dinosaur bones. Just in the last 20 years, over 50 articles have been published in scientific journals that have documented 14 bioorganic materials in dinosaur bones that simply cannot be millions of years old. These include blood vessels, red blood cells, hemoglobin, bone cells, ovalbumin, chitin. Many dinosaur bones are even found unfossilized in places like Madagascar, Alaska, and Montana. Collagen, which has a maximum shelf life of about 900,000 years at 40 degrees. With a maximum shelf life of less than 1 million years, what's collagen doing in dinosaur bones that are supposedly 65 million years old? Limited DNA, skin pigments, FEX proteins, histones, keratin, and elastin.
Okay. So, for one, obviously, that's not what was found in a dinosaur thing, dinosaur fossil, or whatever. All of this information generally comes from Mary Schweitzer. If you guys haven't seen Mary Schweitzer on Apologetics channel, she actually directly responds to creationist attempts to use her work to verify that the dinosaurs died off only thousands of years ago. Now, all of the blood vessels, the blood cells, and all of those like tissues and stuff. For one thing, the tissues. I haven't found a valid like instance of them finding actual like fleshy tissues or something like that. I haven't found a valid instance of that. But Mary Schweitzer, what she ended up finding were cell-like structures and vessel-like canals. And he mentioned hemoglobin. What she found was evidence of heme, which is part of hemoglobin. And so she didn't actually find hemoglobin. She found evidence of it being there. That's not the same thing. And they want to propose that all of these things have been found. Like, for instance, with the collagen. The collagen, under certain circumstances, can last for a very long time because it's a very sturdy thing. And in the environment, encased in the bones of the dinosaurs, the way that collagen decays would allow it to last as long as it has. And she only found remnants of it. It's not like it was a vast network of it. She found remnants of collagen. So they want to act like these things have been found in science, but what they're actually proposing here is a lie. They are straight up lying to people. They are reinterpreting the scientific work of Mary Schweitzer and others in order to supposedly support their position. And it's not at all what they claim it to be.
Just 20 years ago, most scientists simply assumed dinosaur bones were solid mineralized impressions of bones. But modern science has now revealed that many of the dinosaur bones are original, even at the molecular level. The fact that
I don't know where they're getting that from. I didn't find anything on it today. Maybe I just wasn't looking hard enough, but it kind of seems like it would follow along with the other things that they've said. It's either bullshit or they're reinterpreting scientific evidence in order to support their position, and the actual scientific evidence doesn't support their position.
dozen states in the U.S. are filled with dinosaur fossils buried under heaps of mud also attest to the flood. In fact, geologists have found what was a temporarily exposed dinosaur peninsula where the dinosaurs made their last stand, now buried there along with lake and sea life transported by the massive waves. Deposits thousands of feet thick occur east and west of this temporarily exposed peninsula that extended from Minnesota to New Mexico. Now buried across it are pre-flood wetland plants and animals, including dinosaurs, turtles, frogs, fish, and many birds.
So the dinosaur peninsula is made up bullshit by creationists. They do this in order to justify the idea of different fossils, different animal fossils being found in different layers of strata. They want to say that, oh, this low-lying area that is characteristically low enough for a sea once to stretch across North America. This low area is now this high area, this higher ground, right? And they want to say that, oh, the dinosaurs were retreating up this peninsula so that they could escape the floodwaters. And that's why we find different animals at different strata, is because as the animals were fleeing, they got buried at different times, and that's why we find different strata. That's why we only find like trilobites in the lowest strata, while we have dinosaurs somewhere in the middle, and then on into the newer age, the humans and everything like that. So apparently that's why. That's see. ID cannot explain a goddamn thing with their hypothesis. Not one thing. They have to twist information in order to support their position because ID is not predictable. There's no predictions with intelligent design. There are no observations that they can make that actually hold up to scrutiny.
Thousands of dinosaur trackways up and down this peninsula, plus similar temporarily exposed low areas on other continents, suggest that dying dinosaurs and other hardy track makers floated, waded, and walked on freshly deposited mud trying to find safe ground.
And again, they're reading information into the scientific data. They're twisting it to support their own position because nobody in geology, nobody in paleontology, nobody whatsoever thinks that a global flood is what caused the dinosaurs' extinction. Or, well, I guess even Cretaceous don't think that because apparently Noah saved some on the ark. I don't know. But none of this actually makes sense of the observable information that we have in reality.
And coming up over the dinosaur peninsula, the Zuni megasequence catastrophically buries dinosaurs in the Morrison Formation, a 13-state area encompassing over 700,000 square miles. This Jurassic unit includes at least 141 massive dinosaur boneyards, where dinosaurs like Camarasaurus, Diplodocus, Apatosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Allosaurus are found. The Cretaceous layers, like the Hell Creek Formation, are found on top of the Jurassic, holding hundreds of mass boneyards containing several different types of dinosaurs, such as T-Rex, Triceratops, Centrosaurus, and Edmontosaurus that had been living in a different ecosystem, also buried by the Zuni. The Zuni was so massive and fast that it engulfed entire regions with mud flows, burying giant creatures like this T-Rex under 50 feet of muddy sediment, entombed so quickly that preserved blood cells, blood vessels, and bone cells were found just recently.
No, nothing was found recently like that. Cell-like structures, vessel-like canals. That is what was found. And also, geology in general, like uniformitarianism, has a perfectly natural process that can explain these things. I mean, the gradual laying down of strata over millions of years is a viable option, but they can't admit that it's a viable option because to them, the only option available is that God flooded the world. That is the only available option for them. And they want to assume that this flood took place and caused all of this shit to dump onto these dinosaurs and bury them exactly where they were. Why don't we find a mix of them? Why don't we find a mix of Cretaceous and Jurassic dinosaurs mixed together? I mean, did they just naturally separate themselves out on the earth like that? Did God flood the earth just so that it would perfectly lay it down like that? If he did, if that is the hypothesis now, if that is what it predicts, then God has designed this entire event to appear as to not have happened.
How much water does it take to pile 50 feet of mud on top of a dinosaur? The Dinosaur National Monument in Utah contains thousands of visible bones from 11 kinds of dinosaurs that were buried in a jumbled mass in the Morrison Formation, together with crocodiles, turtles, lizards, frogs, and clams. What type of event would it take to bury all these different land animals with millions of clams? When the
Just a normal fucking day in the Cretaceous or the Jurassic period. That's all it would take. Because in that area that they're talking about there, it was actually a sea. And so as the years went on, as the sea changed, as natural disasters happened, these animals were buried by these natural disasters. Not like a global flood kind of natural disaster, because that shit's not natural. The natural disaster would be like a hurricane or some kind of other flooding or something like that. That's what would happen.
Dinosaur Peninsula flooded over completely. Large herds of dinosaurs were entombed in massive fossil graveyards in the Upper Cretaceous system found in northern Wyoming, Montana, and Alberta, Canada. The dinosaurs had tried to escape by fleeing northward up the peninsula.
But see, here's the thing. Let me I'm going to take a screenshot of this real quick and I want to pull it up. Because maybe I'm just not understanding it correctly, or I'm just not following them when they talk about this shit. But all right, so that's the picture that I just took. Now they had a picture of there's a dinosaur peninsula, right? Now maybe I'm wrong, but when they say that the dinosaurs tried to flee this way, like, why is the dinosaur peninsula going the exact opposite direction? Like, maybe I can, I was gonna see if I could try to mess with the, transparency? Is there like a transparency kind of thing? No? Okay, I'm just gonna, fuck it. I don't understand, like, if they were trying to say that the dinosaurs were fleeing the flood, but the flood was coming in on the sides and covering up to the dinosaur peninsula, why would they run towards the flooding? Like, what? I mean, are you just saying that they're fucking dumb as shit? I mean, I guess I can get behind that. They were dinosaurs. They weren't fucking rocket scientists. But, I mean, you're saying that they're fleeing this way. You guys can't fucking see my cursor. They're fleeing towards, like, the west coast. But that's where apparently the waters were, because that's where the dinosaur peninsula forms to the east. So I don't understand what you're trying to say with this particular portion of the video. I don't know. Let me know in the chat right now if you think that, like, I'm just getting this wrong somehow, or I'm not understanding what they're trying to say, but it literally sounds like they're saying that the dinosaurs were fleeing into the flooding and not across the dinosaur peninsula.
Herds of dinosaurs were entombed in massive fossil graveyards in the Upper Cretaceous system found in northern Wyoming, Montana, and Alberta, Canada. The dinosaurs had tried to escape by fleeing northward up the peninsula as...
See? They tried to flee northward up the peninsula. That's not where the fucking peninsula is, even on your stand. Like, peninsula is made up. It's a bullshit creationist thing that they made up in order to make it fit, with what we observe in reality. But it fucking doesn't make sense. It's a mind fuck.
Waters advanced from the south. This explains this massive graveyard in northern Montana that's over 1.2 miles long and contains 30 million fossil fragments representing over 10,000 adult Maiasaura that were simultaneously buried. In this entire collection of bones, not a single baby was found. Every one of these 10,000 Maiasaura was between 9 and 23 feet long. Does this seem like the adult dinosaurs were stampeding away from the raging floodwaters with 100% of their young falling behind and being engulfed in a different part of the peninsula?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is called begging the question. Because you already know the answer, and so you want to get the person to say, yeah, it definitely seems like that shit. But that's not actually what it means. You're presupposing the answer in your question, and that's a literal begging the question fallacy right there. For one thing, this particular area was on the coast of the sea that stretched across the North America. So yeah, one really bad storm and all of those Maiasaurs or whatever the fuck are gonna get killed. Okay, they're gonna get buried by flooding or whatever else, local floods, not a global flood. So that explains that. Next up, you claim that, oh, there's no babies present, therefore these fucking Maiasaurs are shitty fucking parents. They were running their asses to get away from the flood. They were leaving their babies back there behind because they're fucking shitty dinosaurs. We should hate them and glad that they're extinct. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm reading that into what you're fucking saying here, but it seems like you're doing a lot of that yourself. But the fact is that in that area there are nesting sites for Maiasaurs. So they would take care of the babies at the nesting sites, let them grow, and then they would move on. So, I mean, you're just lying at this point. Yeah, maybe there weren't any babies that you could find, like, fossils of them, but that doesn't mean that there were never babies in that herd. That's just ridiculous.
Just 170 miles northeast of this location is one of the largest dinosaur graveyards in the world. One that even secular scientists admit was caused by a watery catastrophe.
Yes, they do admit that it was caused by a watery catastrophe. Most of these are because of watery catastrophes. But the fact of the matter is that watery catastrophe doesn't mean global flood. Okay? It means that there was some other natural thing that happened that caused a watery catastrophe, like a tropical storm, a hurricane, some kind of fucking thing like that. It doesn't mean a global flood.
Here, thousands of centrosaurs are buried in 14 mega bone beds over an entire square mile, which is nearly 500 football fields. Looks like a massive herd of these creatures, thousands of them, were simultaneously buried in mud by Noah's flood. Just 45 miles west from this location is yet another massive flood deposit, and this one even has 49 different species of dinosaurs buried along with turtles, crocodiles, fish, flying reptiles, birds, and small mammals.
Yes, because that was like that part of the fucking area was also on the shoreline of that great fucking sea that we've been talking about this entire time. That's the reason why you find it there with all that marine life and everything. They automatically want to jump to Noah's flood, obviously, but there are so many more natural explanations for these things.
What type of disaster could bury 49 species of dinosaurs and many other types of animals, including marine life, together in massive graves? These mass burial sites are common in the US as well. For example, look at this dinosaur dig site in Wyoming, where a 1-meter thick layer of mudstone stretches for 80 acres, with over 1 million bones buried in a graded, sorted bed, where big bones are found at the bottom and little bones on top. The only way to develop a graded bed like this is by a catastrophic process that transports these bones and deposits them during a single event.
Citation needed. Like, why would a flood neatly organize a bone bed? If even, like, I couldn't verify that the bone bed is sorted with the larger bones at the bottom and the smaller bones at top, but let's just assume that they're correct, at least in that. How would a global flood actually explain the bigger bones, like, at the bottom and the smaller bones at the top? Like, if the global flood happened and it mixed up all of the bones and they were quickly buried by mud, I mean, the bones don't sink in mud because of density shit, right? So why would the global flood explain this? I'm just kind of curious. Also, why are there different strata that appear there? If it was a global flood, there would be one strata, but there's multiple strata all over the earth. See, the geologic column, it does exist, and the fact that it exists disproves creationism, because we should only find one strata all over the earth. That's all that we should find. But nope, that's not what we find in reality.
Large flying creatures like pterosaurs were able to fly to escape the rising floodwaters, delaying their demise until the later stages of the flood.
I like how earlier they were shitting on the idea of pterosaurs flying through the air, but now they're like, oh, sure, pterosaurs were able to fly in the air and to escape the flood. Do you see how they love to like manipulate the scientific information in order to push their own particular position? Because when flying pteranodons, pterosaurs in general, would disagree with the current science about them flying, they used it to disprove evolution or disprove deep time or whatever the fuck they were trying to disprove. But now that it can work in their own particular hypothesis, of course they could fly. Obviously, though, I guess if you think about it, they would consider the Earth's atmosphere to be the exact same now as it was back then, the same content and everything like that, which isn't exactly true. The atmosphere has changed a lot over the lifespan of the Earth. So it wasn't necessarily the same as it is now. But regardless of that point, pteranodons, pterosaurs, they could fly. We don't know exactly how they flew, whether they whether they glided or however they flew. They had the wings and everything for a reason. So
the fossil record shows they are buried in many different layers all over the world. Does this
Well, yeah, because pteranodons could fly and shit. Pterosaurs could fly and shit, and so they could easily propagate across the globe. Like, that's the reason why.
evidence seem to support the Bible's recent and violent flood or evolution stories? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't make me think about evolution. It does make me think about how much bullshit you're slinging in this video, though.
Looking for answers about what the Bible...
Nope, not looking for answers in the Bible or anything kind of shit like that. Nothing that we're going to be looking at you for. So thank you very much. Well, heathens, that's going to be it for the video tonight. I hope that you found it informational. There are a lot of links that I've got in the description down below. If you want to learn more about dinosaurs and all the bullshit that they spilled, or all the bullshit, they call it, spilling the tea? They shake their tea bags off or something? I don't know. They slung a bunch of bullshit in this video. So if you want to know more about how they got it wrong, go to the links in the description. They can explain it a lot better than I can. But I hope that you maybe learned something, at least from the Today I Learned section tonight. Anyways, if you're not going to be sticking around for the Skeptic Mafia comments, which we are about to go over, then I hope that you guys have a lovely Saturday night. I'll see you heathens later next week at the Friday time, because hopefully I'm not going to be sick at that point. So it'll be Friday, 8:30 p.m. Central next week, and I guess we'll see you heathens on Monday for some Frank Turek bullshit. And don't forget to stand up, use your voice, all that kind of good shit.